The day the Galactic Council gathered to make the announcement felt strangely calm at first. The great chamber, a place usually filled with constant motion, soft echoes, and glowing lights, seemed quieter than usual. Representatives from hundreds of distant worlds sat in their places, each carrying their own expectations about what the meeting would bring. Many had already made up their minds before the session even started. They believed the decision was obvious, even overdue. Humans, according to most of them, were unpredictable, emotional, and always rushing toward danger without thinking twice. To them, it felt reasonable to put humans in a category that reflected this dot at the center of the chamber. The council speaker rose slowly from the floating platform. The room dimmed slightly, a sign that the official announcement was about to begin. Every representative turned toward the center, ready for what they assumed would be a simple and unimportant declaration. The speaker cleared their throat and began explaining the long list of reports, studies, and observations collected over many years. These reports all described humanity from the viewpoint of outsiders, a young species, noisy, energetic, sometimes careless, but somehow always moving forward, no matter what happened to them. The speaker paused, letting the tension build before delivering the final line. Then, in a calm voice, the official verdict was announced. The Galactic Council had decided to classify humans as an inferior species. For a moment, the chamber remained completely silent. Many of the representatives expected applause, or at least some nods of agreement, but instead the silence felt heavy, almost uncomfortable. A few counselors shifted in their seats. One representative leaned closer to another and whispered something doubtful. No one had expected the moment to feel like this. They thought the declaration would give them a sense of relief or certainty. But instead, it brought a strange uneasiness. The speaker continued speaking, explaining that the decision was not meant as an insult, but as a safety measure. According to the council, humans were too unpredictable to be allowed full access to advanced technology or high-level diplomatic power. Some representatives agreed with every word. Others felt unsure. Humanity had always behaved differently from other species. They did not follow patterns. They did not stay where they were expected, and they certainly did not remain quiet when someone underestimated them. That was what made this judgment feel risky. As the announcement ended, the glowing screens displayed the new classification for everyone to see. It was official now. Humans had been labeled as inferior across the galaxy. The reaction inside the chamber was mixed. Some council members slumped back into their seats, feeling satisfied that they had made a responsible decision. But others could not shake the uncomfortable feeling in their stomachs. One representative from a water-like species tapped nervously on the edge of their pod. Another representative blinked slowly, reviewing past reports in their mind and wondering whether they had made the right choice. The speaker closed the meeting with a statement about peace, unity, and the responsibility of guiding younger species. But even those words sounded uncertain. The moment the lights in the chamber brightened again, groups of representatives began whispering to one another. The conversation in the room shifted from confidence to quiet concern. A few members started questioning the decision privately, not because they believed humans were perfect, but because they had seen how humans reacted when someone told them they couldn't do something. The council had observed humans for many years. They had seen how humans responded to challenges often with surprising strength, unexpected creativity, or stubborn determination. They had watched humans adapt faster than any species recorded in the council's history. And deep down, some representatives wondered if declaring humans inferior might trigger something none of them were prepared for. Back on Earth, the news had not reached anyone yet. But in the council chamber, the weight of the decision had already begun to settle. One counselor leaned back and sighed, as if they could already imagine humans hearing the announcement. Another rubbed their temples, thinking about the times humans had shocked them before, like the time they solved the galactic puzzle that several advanced species had struggled with for decades. Or when they managed to fix a communication glitch that even the Council's engineers could not solve for years. The more the counselors thought about those moments, the more uneasy they became. The speaker finally stepped away from the center platform, and the meeting was officially closed. A long, echoing sound filled the hall, followed by the gentle hum of the floating seats moving back to their resting positions. Representatives began drifting out of the chamber, some in deep thought, others pretending to feel confident outside. The massive council station floated quietly in the void. Its polished metal surface reflected distant stars and glowing nebulae. The station had stood for centuries, serving as a symbol of cooperation and high-level order. But today, it felt like it was carrying a decision that might bring unexpected consequences. As the representatives left, a few assistants hurried to prepare the official statement that would soon spread across the galaxy. They typed the words carefully, making sure the tone sounded professional and respectful. But even they paused at the phrase inferior species. Something about it sounded unnecessarily harsh. Still, they were not allowed to change it. The decision had already been made. Far from the council, in a quiet corner of space, a transport ship carrying food supplies approached the station. The crew on board chatted casually. One of them mentioned hearing rumors about the ongoing council debate, though none knew what the final decision was. They joked lightly about how humans always made things complicated. But even their jokes carried a sense of curiosity, as if they expected humans to surprise the galaxy again soon. Inside the chamber, now nearly empty, the glowing screens slowly faded. Only one representative remained, a quiet observer from a small, peaceful species. They sat alone, staring at the dark screen, thinking deeply. They had always felt humans were different, not worse. Flawed, yes. Imperfect, absolutely. But also courageous, adaptable, and capable of kindness, even in difficult situations. Declaring them inferior felt like placing them inside a box, far too small for what they could become. The representative sighed, stood up, and floated out of the chamber. The massive doors slid closed behind them with a soft vibration. For now, the decision was final. There was no going back. But even before the announcement reached Earth, some members of the council already regretted it, not openly, not loudly, but quietly inside their minds. They had underestimated a species that had built entire civilizations from almost nothing. A species that learned, changed, improved, and adapted faster than anyone expected. A species that had turned countless struggles into stories of resilience. What the council had just done was more than a classification. It was a challenge, even if they did not intend it to be one. And anyone who knew humans well enough could sense what might come next. Somewhere deep within the chambers, a soft warning light blinked on a data console. It showed a summary of past human achievements, mixed with predictions about their potential growth. The chart pointed upward, sharply upward. A quiet reminder that even the Council's most careful calculations could not fully predict human behavior. The console blinked again, almost like a heartbeat. And far away, on a blue planet unaware of this new decision, millions of humans continued with their day. They laughed, argued, worked, explored, dreamed, and lived their lives in ways no council report could ever capture. Soon, the news would reach them. And when it did, their response would shape the next chapter, all because of a verdict made in a quiet chamber in the middle of space. For now, the galaxy remained calm. But beneath that calm, something important had been set in motion. The council had declared humans inferior. But deep inside, many of them were already wondering if they had just made one of the biggest mistakes in their long history. The news of the Galactic Council's decision traveled across space faster than anyone had expected. On Earth, the moment humans learned they had been officially labeled as an inferior species, The reactions were not what the council had imagined. No panic, no chaos, no cries of anger. Instead, there was curiosity, surprise, and a strange sort of excitement. People gathered in homes, offices, and public squares, discussing what it really meant to be called inferior by beings they had never met. The announcement had arrived as a broadcast on every screen capable of receiving interstellar communication. Humans watched, read, and listened carefully. Some laughed at the audacity of the council, joking that a group of alien politicians had officially underestimated them. Others were silent, thinking deeply about the challenge they had just received without even asking for it. Students in schools argued over whether they should try to prove themselves to the galaxy or simply ignore the judgment. Scientists and engineers began scribbling ideas on boards and notebooks, planning ways to show that humans were more capable than the council assumed. Even ordinary citizens, people who never thought about space beyond their neighborhoods, felt a new sense of attention on them. Store owners, teachers, drivers, and artists began talking about it. They did not feel insulted. Instead, they felt like the galaxy had thrown down a challenge, almost like saying, "We don't believe in you." And humans, as always, had a way of turning challenges into opportunities. News channels ran interviews with experts in various fields. Some astrophysicists and space engineers speculated about the council's reasons. They explained that humans had always been impulsive, sometimes reckless, and often underestimated the scale of problems before attempting them. But they also pointed out that humans had survived incredible hardships, solved problems that seemed impossible, and adapted to conditions other species could not imagine. In their own way, humans had already been proving their worth. Even if the council had not noticed that, as the days passed, a unique energy spread across human society. Schools introduced projects about space exploration and interstellar diplomacy. Students drew imaginative ships, designed communication tools, and even debated ways to reach out to other worlds. Universities held conferences about human potential and what it meant to be underestimated. Ordinary people, inspired by the idea that the galaxy was watching, began taking small actions that reflected curiosity and determination. They were building models, experimenting with new ideas, and sharing knowledge in ways that had never been organized before in the scientific community. The reaction was even more remarkable. Teams of engineers, researchers, and inventors started collaborating in ways they never had before. They shared theories, tested ideas rapidly, and brainstormed solutions to problems that the council had assumed were beyond human capability. Laboratories that had been quietly working on incremental progress suddenly became hubs of intense activity. Every breakthrough, no matter how small, felt like a statement. Humans could rise to the occasion, even if the galaxy doubted them at the same time. Human leaders, political, academic, and social, began emphasizing unity. They understood that the council's judgment, though distant and abstract, had sparked something important. Leaders encouraged cooperation across fields, sharing resources, and fostering creativity. They reminded people that being underestimated was an opportunity to show strength, not a reason to feel inferior. The human response was not about proving anger or resentment. It was about showing who they were when faced with a challenge larger than any they had encountered before. Meanwhile, the council observed quietly from afar. Initially, they expected to see confusion, rebellion, or even panic among humans. Instead, they saw something entirely different: resilience, focus, and a subtle, growing confidence. Some counselors began to worry that labeling humans as inferior might not have the effect they intended. Others still assumed humans would stumble, make mistakes, and eventually prove the verdict correct. But the early signals were beginning to raise doubts. In cities, towns, and rural areas, humans acted in small but significant ways. Artists created murals and sculptures inspired by the idea of reaching the stars. Writers and storytellers imagined futures where humanity explored space, learned from other species, and overcame challenges. Engineers built prototypes for faster transportation, renewable energy systems, and even communication devices designed to function beyond Earth. Young people were particularly inspired, seeing the judgment not as an insult, but as a reason to dream bigger than ever before. Families discussed the news at dinner tables, debating whether humans could truly become what the council claimed they were not. These conversations were not fearful or resentful. They were full of curiosity, encouragement, and hope. Parents reminded children that humans had always thrived under pressure, that mistakes were part of growth, and that the world could achieve more if people worked together. Communities organized small projects, like building telescopes, setting up local science experiments, and discussing how humans could prepare for potential contact with other worlds, even in entertainment. The effect was noticeable. Filmmakers, musicians, and game designers began incorporating themes of space, challenge, and perseverance. Shows depicted humans reaching for impossible goals, making unexpected discoveries, and working together to overcome obstacles. Music celebrated resilience and imagination, and games allowed players to explore the universe as humans who defied expectations. Creativity became a form of subtle protest, showing that humans were much more than the label given to them by distant observers. As the weeks passed, scientists started producing results that surprised even themselves. Small breakthroughs in energy storage, propulsion theory, and sustainable systems were shared openly in scientific journals and digital networks. International collaborations formed almost overnight, and new research hubs appeared in unexpected places. Students and professors worked together with engineers, hobbyists, and inventors, creating a culture of innovation that had never existed at this scale before. Humans were pushing the boundaries of what anyone thought possible. Meanwhile, the Council began to receive reports of these developments. Their initial expectation that humans would feel discouraged or inferior was clearly wrong. The humans were responding not with fear, but with creativity, cooperation, and determination. One report noted that in less than a month, humans had made progress in areas that the Council had predicted would take years. Another report highlighted the growing interest in space technology and interstellar communication, demonstrating that humans were not only willing to learn, but also capable of acting faster than anyone expected. Council members began to whisper privately among themselves, questioning the wisdom of their earlier decision. A few openly worried that underestimating humans might turn out to be a mistake. They had assumed humans were a species to be contained, guided, and controlled. Instead, the humans were taking the judgment as a spark to innovate, connect, and rise above expectations. It was a response that no one in the Council had anticipated. Humans, in their daily lives, continued to demonstrate their strength quietly but steadily. Ordinary people discovered new ways to solve problems at work, in schools, and in their communities. Volunteers organized programs to educate others about science, technology, and space exploration. Makers and inventors shared ideas online, encouraging collaboration across borders. People everywhere began thinking not just about themselves, but about humanity as a whole, and what it could achieve if it worked together. Even children joined in the movement, asking questions, building models, and imagining worlds beyond Earth. Their curiosity was contagious, spreading to adults who wanted to support and encourage the next generation. Families participated in experiments, crafts, and discussions, all inspired by the idea that humans were underestimated. Every action, big or small, reflected a determination to prove that humans were capable, resourceful, and intelligent. By the end of the month, it became clear to observers everywhere that the Council's declaration had unintentionally motivated humanity. People were acting with purpose, creativity, and unity. The label inferior had not insulted them, it had challenged them to become better versions of themselves. Scientists were solving problems faster, communities were working closer together, and people across the world were dreaming bigger than ever. Even though the Council could not see it directly, the effects were already spreading. The energy of humanity, once underestimated, was becoming visible in every corner of the planet. People had not only accepted the challenge, they had embraced it. They laughed, experimented, shared ideas, and supported one another in ways that had never been so widespread. And through it all, they maintained their human spirit, curious, determined, compassionate, and always ready to try, even when success was uncertain. Somewhere high above the Earth, satellites and observation posts recorded the activity, analyzing human behavior in ways the Council had predicted, but the results were unexpected. Humans were not panicked, angry, or fearful. They were inspired, motivated, and active. They were working together, exploring ideas, and dreaming in ways that promised growth and innovation far beyond what anyone had expected. By the time the sea. After the initial shock of the Galactic Council's declaration, humans didn't just accept it, they began moving in ways no one could have predicted. Within weeks, small breakthroughs in science and technology started appearing across Earth. The Council had assumed that humans, young and chaotic as they were, would stumble or be discouraged. Instead, humans seemed energized. They didn't just work harder, they worked smarter, often in ways that surprised even themselves. In labs around the world, teams of researchers collaborated in unprecedented ways. People shared ideas openly, not for personal gain, but to push humanity forward. Engineers who had worked alone for years suddenly connected with other specialists, merging their knowledge and solving problems faster than anyone imagined. Some of the breakthroughs were small and new material that could store energy more efficiently, a clever device that could communicate across longer distances, but others were larger. The kind of ideas that could eventually allow humans to reach beyond Earth. Universities became hubs of excitement. Students stayed late, discussing theories and testing experiments. Teachers encouraged curiosity, and students took it to heart. In one lab, a group of young students managed to create a prototype propulsion system that moved objects faster than anything that had been attempted in a simple classroom setting. It was far from perfect, but it worked. And the excitement it generated was contagious. Across the city, other students built their own versions, tested them, and shared results online. The project quickly became global. Even outside formal science, humans began showing unexpected ingenuity. Farmers experimented with automated tools and irrigation systems, sharing results with neighbors in ways that improved efficiency. Artists and engineers collaborated to build large-scale models of new transportation systems. Inventors created energy-efficient solutions for daily life, not just for themselves, but for entire communities. Each small victory added to the growing belief that humans could do much more than the Council had predicted. Governments started noticing too. Leaders encouraged collaboration between nations, setting aside political differences to focus on human potential. They realized that if the species was going to prove its worth to the galaxy, it needed to do so as a united front. Research centers, educational institutions, and private organizations began working together, exchanging knowledge and ideas faster than ever. Ordinary citizens joined in by participating in local projects, learning about science and technology, and sharing what they discovered. The media captured it all. News outlets ran stories about humans working together, breaking barriers, and solving problems creatively. One headline read, "Humans reach new heights. Innovative ideas show unexpected genius." People everywhere were inspired. Even those who hadn't been interested in science or space before became curious. building small projects at home, asking questions, and imagining what humanity could achieve next. While humans were busy building, inventing, and dreaming, the council watched closely. Reports began to arrive faster than expected. Each report highlighted new human achievements, breakthroughs in energy storage, improvements in communication systems, and unexpected problem-solving skills. Council members who had predicted human inferiority started to feel uneasy. Humans were not just surviving the challenge, they were excelling. Some counselors whispered among themselves. They had assumed that humans would follow predictable patterns, but humans rarely did what was expected. Instead of panicking or retreating, they had learned to work together, innovate, and adapt quickly. Every step forward raised new questions. Could humans really be underestimated? Was the council's verdict correct, or had they made a mistake in their assessment? Even as the council questioned their decision, humans continued to surprise them. Teams of engineers developed new energy systems that required far fewer resources than expected. Scientists found ways to store and transmit data more efficiently. Students and hobbyists built small, experimental propulsion devices, proving that even young minds could contribute to progress. Every project, every test, every small invention carried a quiet message. Humans were capable, resourceful, and relentless in their pursuit of improvement. Communities on Earth also began to change. People became more supportive of each other, sharing resources and knowledge. Workshops and makerspaces opened, giving everyone a chance to participate in innovation. Ordinary people, who once thought their contributions were too small to matter, realized that even simple ideas could have an impact. They built prototypes, tested new tools, and experimented with energy systems. People who had never been involved in science before discovered that curiosity, creativity, and persistence could lead to real results. The culture of collaboration spread beyond science. In schools, children built models of spaceships, communication devices, and energy systems. Teachers encouraged creativity, and students learned to work together. Families participated in experiments at home, sometimes failing, but always learning and improving. Art, storytelling, and design became tools for problem-solving, allowing humans to approach challenges from multiple angles. Creativity became a shared resource, fueling innovation everywhere. As humans continued to work, the council grew increasingly uneasy. They had underestimated not only the skill, but also the spirit of the species. The humans were not easily discouraged, and they did not take labels or judgments as final. They had turned a declaration of inferiority into a source of motivation. Counselors realized that labeling humans as inferior had an unintended consequence. It had sparked unprecedented cooperation, creativity, and determination. Some council members tried to warn others. They reminded their colleagues of past human behavior, how humans could adapt quickly, learn from mistakes, and achieve what seemed impossible. But others dismissed these warnings, insisting that humans would eventually fail or encounter limits they could not overcome. Yet even the skeptics could not ignore the results. Human progress was real, and it was happening faster than anyone had anticipated. In cities around the world, new inventions appeared almost daily. Energy-efficient vehicles, experimental communication devices, and prototypes for advanced transportation systems were created. People shared their knowledge online, allowing anyone with curiosity and skill to contribute. Students, hobbyists, and professionals collaborated in ways that crossed traditional boundaries. Innovation became a collective effort, driven by curiosity, ambition, and a desire to prove the council wrong, not out of anger, but out of pride and determination. Even entertainment reflected this change. Movies, books, and games began exploring themes of human potential, innovation, and exploration. Artists depicted humans building, learning, and traveling to the stars. Writers imagined futures where humans overcame challenges through creativity and cooperation. Games encouraged players to solve problems, collaborate, and dream. In every aspect of culture, humans were reflecting and reinforcing the message that they were capable of far more than anyone expected. Everywhere, humans were proving their resilience and adaptability. They learned quickly from mistakes, tested ideas rapidly, and shared knowledge freely. Even failures became stepping stones, teaching lessons that led to new discoveries. People began seeing themselves not as limited by the Council's judgment, but as capable of redefining what it meant to be human. Every experiment, every project, and every small success contributed to a growing sense of purpose and potential. Council observers continued to report these developments. Their initial predictions of human inferiority were proving wrong. Humans were not following predictable patterns. They were thinking creatively, acting decisively, and working together across borders, cultures, and disciplines. The species once labeled inferior was now demonstrating qualities that challenged centuries of assumptions about intelligence, cooperation, and adaptability. Even ordinary humans, going about their daily lives, contributed to this movement. Teachers inspired students, parents encouraged children, and communities shared ideas. People who had never considered themselves innovators became part of a global network of curiosity and experimentation. Humanity as a whole began moving faster, thinking bigger, and reaching farther than any individual or group could have imagined. As progress continued, the Council grew increasingly anxious. Some members began to regret their decision, realizing that underestimating humans had sparked something far more powerful than they intended. Humans were responding to the challenge not with fear or frustration, but with creativity, unity, and determination. Every new project, invention, or discovery became evidence that the Council had misjudged the species. Despite the Council's growing unease, humans continued their work, unaware of the impact they were having on distant observers. They laughed, debated, experimented, and shared knowledge. They celebrated small victories and learned from failures. Each day, they proved that being underestimated was not a limitation, but a chance to grow, explore, and innovate. In a way, the Council had given humanity a gift without meaning to. The declaration of inferiority became a spark, igniting curiosity, collaboration, and ambition. Humans had always been resilient, but now they had a shared goal that extended beyond borders, cultures, or personal achievement. They were proving every day that the galaxy's judgment. Months had passed since the Galactic Council declared humans an inferior species, and in that time, humanity had quietly but steadily grown in knowledge, creativity, and collaboration. The Council, who had expected humans to stumble or panic, now watched in a mix of curiosity and unease. Reports kept coming in. New energy systems, experimental propulsion technologies, improved communication networks, and countless small innovations. Every day seemed to bring proof that humans were not just surviving, they were thriving. No one in the Council had anticipated what happened next. A small delegation of humans had constructed a spacecraft capable of traveling far beyond Earth's orbit, and even though it was modest, it had one unique quality. It worked. The ship wasn't sleek or perfectly polished. Its design was practical, patched together from multiple technologies, and noisy in a way that other species found almost chaotic. But it could travel faster than any Council observers had expected for a human-made vessel, and more importantly, it could reach the Council station. The Council first learned about it through an automated alert. The message reads simply, "Human delegation approaching. Unknown intent. Ship functional." Council members stared at the report in silence. Some laughed nervously, assuming it was a miscalculation. Others leaned forward, their eyes wide with disbelief. Humans had not only built a ship, but were actually coming to visit the Council. And the speed of their progress suggested they might arrive sooner than anyone had expected. Preparations began immediately. Council representatives moved quickly to understand the human ship and its potential threat. Security protocols were checked, communication lines were opened, and every sensor capable of tracking the vessel was activated. The chamber buzzed with activity, but under the surface, unease was growing. Council members had expected to observe humanity from afar, but now humans were arriving on their doorstep, literally. This was unprecedented. Meanwhile, on Earth, the human delegation prepared for the journey. The crew consisted of engineers, scientists, and explorers who had spent years working on propulsion, navigation, and communication systems. They were ordinary people, but extraordinary in their dedication. They had studied reports of the Council's past interactions with other species, analyzed the reactions to the inferior species declaration, and built their mission not to provoke, but to understand. Their goal was simple: make contact, learn, and observe, all while representing humanity with calm, determination, and curiosity. The spacecraft lifted off quietly, slipping into orbit with precision. From the ground, it looked unremarkable, just another object among thousands of satellites. But on board, the crew felt a mixture of excitement and responsibility. They knew the eyes of the galaxy were on them, even if most people on Earth could not see it yet. Every adjustment, every calculation, and every communication was made carefully. They were not reckless. They were humans, determined to explore, to learn, and to show what their species could do. As the ship approached the Council station, observers from various species watched with increasing anxiety. They had expected humans to arrive in decades, not months. They had assumed the species would struggle to build a working ship capable of such a journey. And yet, here it was, moving steadily, efficiently, and without error. The Council began to realize that their earlier assessment of human capability might have been fundamentally flawed. When the ship finally docked, the Council chamber had prepared a reception. The massive doors opened slowly, revealing the human delegation. Council members expected an emotional, perhaps even hostile response. They had imagined humans arriving with anger, demanding explanations, or causing chaos through impulsive actions. But the humans were calm. Their expressions were steady, their posture relaxed, and their voices polite. They spoke clearly and confidently, introducing themselves and explaining their purpose. They had come to understand, not to argue. The chamber fell silent. Representatives whispered among themselves, trying to reconcile what they saw with their expectations. They had predicted conflict, disorder, and unpredictability. Instead, they were greeted by humans who were orderly, respectful, and surprisingly composed. Some counselors felt uneasy. They realized that the humans' calm demeanor was not a sign of weakness, but of confidence, intelligence, and self-control. The human delegation explained their mission simply. They wanted to learn more about the galaxy, understand the Council's decisions, and begin discussions about cooperation. They spoke in ways that were easy to understand, using clear logic and respectful language. They did not ask for special treatment, nor did they demand recognition. They simply sought knowledge and dialogue. It was a bold approach, and one the Council had not expected. As the conversation continued, it became clear that humans had prepared meticulously. They anticipated questions, considered potential misunderstandings, and approached the discussion with curiosity rather than aggression. Council members who had doubted the species before found themselves impressed. The humans' ability to think ahead, communicate clearly, and remain composed under pressure challenged the assumptions that had led to the inferior species declaration. Some counselors tried to test the humans, asking difficult questions about technology, ethics, and interstellar diplomacy. The humans answered thoughtfully, sometimes admitting gaps in knowledge, but always demonstrating a willingness to learn and adapt. Their honesty and humility contrasted sharply with their remarkable confidence and problem-solving skills. Every answer, every response, made the council question the accuracy of their earlier judgment. Outside the formal discussions, humans quietly observed the station itself. They noticed the systems, the organization, and the way different species interacted. They took mental notes, asked questions about protocols, and shared ideas for improvement, but always politely and without judgment. It was a subtle demonstration of how humans could collaborate without causing disruption. Council members, watching these interactions, felt a growing mix of surprise and respect. The delegation also shared some of the developments from Earth. They spoke of collaborations across nations, breakthroughs in energy storage, experimental propulsion technologies, and rapid advancements in communication systems. They emphasized that humans were motivated not by anger at the Council's decision, but by curiosity, creativity, and a desire to explore. The Council realized that the humans' response was not typical. It was neither reckless nor predictable. It was something entirely new. Some members of the Council began to whisper among themselves, privately acknowledging what they had always suspected. Humans were unpredictable, but not in the way they had assumed. Their unpredictability was not chaos. It was creativity, resilience, and adaptability. They had underestimated not only human intelligence, but also the human spirit. And now, faced with these visitors, it was becoming painfully clear that humans might have capabilities far beyond what anyone had calculated. The human delegation spent hours on the station, walking carefully through corridors, asking thoughtful questions, and taking in the environment. They met with various species, learning about their cultures, technologies, and priorities. They observed quietly, but spoke when appropriate, always demonstrating curiosity, respect, and insight. Their ability to adapt quickly to new situations impressed many counselors. The humans did not dominate discussions, nor did they shrink into silence. They found a balance that was uniquely human, thoughtful, deliberate, and engaging. By the time the delegation prepared to leave, the council was left with an uneasy realization. The species they had called Inferior had arrived unexpectedly, behaved intelligently, and communicated effectively. They had not made mistakes, caused chaos, or acted impulsively. Instead, they had demonstrated qualities that challenged centuries of assumptions: creativity, composure, and an ability to learn rapidly. Council members were forced to reconsider their earlier judgments. Even after the humans departed, their presence lingered. Observers continued to analyze their behavior, trying to understand how a species previously labeled inferior could act with such intelligence, patience, and adaptability. Conversations within the council became more cautious. Some members admitted privately that their initial assessment had been wrong, while others remained skeptical, unwilling to fully accept the possibility that humans were more capable than they had predicted. Meanwhile, back on Earth, the human delegation returned to applause and curiosity. People celebrated their achievement, not as heroes, but as representatives of human potential. Their journey, calm demeanor, and thoughtful interactions became stories shared widely, proof that humans could act with intelligence, cooperation, and creativity. Even under the pressure of representing their entire species to the galaxy. The visit marked a turning point. Humans had shown that they were willing and capable of stepping into new, challenging environments with confidence, respect, and insight. They had turned an official judgment of inferiority into an opportunity to demonstrate the very qualities the Council had assumed they lacked. It was a quiet but powerful statement. Humans were not defined by labels, and they were far more capable than anyone had predicted. Council members, reflecting on the visit, began to see humans in a new light. They were unpredictable, yes, but not chaotic. They were The human delegation's visit to the Galactic Council station had left ripples that no one could ignore. Council members, who had expected a chaotic, angry, or impulsive species, now found themselves questioning every assumption they had ever made about humans. Across the galaxy, reports of human achievements began arriving at an ever-increasing pace. New energy systems, experimental propulsion designs, and communication methods were being developed faster than any council records had anticipated. Humans were not just learning, they were innovating, collaborating, and surprising everyone at every step. In many parts of the council, anxiety grew. Private conversations revealed a growing concern. Had they underestimated the species they had so confidently labeled as inferior? Some counselors admitted quietly to colleagues that humans were unpredictable, but not in a way they had expected. Their unpredictability was not recklessness. It was creativity, adaptability, and resilience. They were a species that could think, learn, and act in ways that no one fully understood. The label of inferiority, meant to confine them, was now pushing humans to reach further, achieve more, and prove the council wrong. Meanwhile, back on Earth, humans continued their rapid progress. Inspired by the visit, universities, laboratories, and private research teams accelerated their work. Projects that had once taken years to complete were now moving forward in months. Engineers built devices that improved energy efficiency. Scientists shared discoveries about new materials, propulsion techniques, and long-distance communication. Students collaborated with experts, and even hobbyists contributed with their innovative ideas. People everywhere were finding ways to participate, no matter how small their contributions. This growing human capability began to catch the attention of other species. Diplomats, traders, and explorers who had interacted with humans in the past noticed that they were no longer the same as they had been years before. Humans were learning quickly, solving problems creatively, and working together in ways that no other species could match. Some began to question the Council's judgment, realizing that labeling humans as inferior might have been a serious mistake. The more humans achieved, the more the Council's credibility was quietly challenged. Even as humans progressed, the Council tried to maintain authority. They issued statements reinforcing the original classification, attempting to keep other species aligned with their decision. But these statements were quickly undermined by the real-world actions of humans. Every breakthrough, no matter how small, contradicted the judgment. Every experiment, every collaborative project, and every new design demonstrated a species that could think, learn, and innovate far beyond what anyone had expected. Humans did not act with arrogance or hostility. They were not trying to challenge the Council openly or to take control of the galaxy. Instead, they focused on their work, understanding, creating, and improving. The human approach was subtle but powerful. They were demonstrating their potential through action rather than confrontation. It was a method that left the Council with little room to argue, and it forced other species to reconsider their assumptions. In the Council chamber, debates grew heated. Representatives from multiple species discussed the implications of human progress. Some argued that humans were an anomaly, a species that might reach incredible heights but could also fail unexpectedly. Others were more cautious, noting that humans were adapting, collaborating, and learning faster than any record could predict. The debate revealed one thing clearly. The Council could not ignore the consequences of underestimating humans. Back on Earth, humanity's growth was not limited to technology. Education, communication, and social collaboration advanced rapidly as well. Communities shared knowledge openly, encouraging participation from all citizens. People realized that every small contribution mattered. Students built models of new propulsion systems. Families experimented with energy solutions, and professionals collaborated across borders. Innovation became a shared effort, and humans began solving problems collectively in ways that impressed even themselves. These achievements reached the Council through continuous monitoring and reports. Observers noted that humans were learning from their mistakes, adapting strategies, and improving systems at remarkable speeds. One project involved creating a more efficient energy storage system, while another explored long-distance communication using unconventional methods. Each development showed that humans were capable of thinking outside the box and using creativity to overcome obstacles that other species might consider impossible. The Council's initial confidence began to crumble. The label of inferiority, intended to contain humans, had inadvertently pushed them to act with determination, intelligence, and collaboration. Counselors began to admit privately that humans were learning faster than predicted and achieving results that challenged every assumption about their species. They realized that the consequences of underestimating humans were far greater than anyone had imagined. Humans' ability to work together also caught the attention of neighboring species. Some smaller civilizations, who had been wary of humans, started observing them more closely. Diplomats and researchers noticed that humans could solve problems through collaboration, creativity, and practical solutions. They realized that the species they had assumed was inferior could become a valuable partner or a formidable competitor, depending on how the situation developed. The Council's internal tension increased. Some members suggested revisiting the classification, acknowledging the rapid progress humans had made. Others resisted, unwilling to admit that their judgment had been flawed. But even the skeptics could not ignore the evidence. Humans were consistently exceeding expectations. They were solving problems, sharing knowledge, and adapting to new challenges with intelligence and creativity. The more humans achieved, the clearer it became that the Council had misjudged them. On Earth, humans continued to innovate in subtle ways. Communities shared ideas for sustainable energy, transportation, and communication. Artists and engineers collaborated to create functional prototypes. Students tested theories in classrooms, workshops, and homes. Every new project reinforced the growing awareness that humans were capable of far more than the Council had predicted. They were not reckless, and they were not impulsive. They were determined, curious, and persistent. The Council began to notice a pattern. Unlike other species that responded predictably to pressure, humans thrived under challenges. They learned quickly, worked together, and used creativity to overcome obstacles. The declaration of inferiority, intended as a measure of control, had unintentionally sparked motivation, innovation, and unity. Humans were demonstrating that they could adapt and grow far faster than anyone had anticipated. As the weeks and months passed, humans' progress became harder to ignore. Reports of breakthroughs in propulsion, energy systems, and communication methods were consistently confirmed. Observers noted the ingenuity, persistence, and creativity of humans. Even small projects, when combined, demonstrated the species' ability to innovate on a large scale. Council members realized that their original judgment had not only been premature, but potentially damaging to their credibility. Private discussions within the Council became more urgent. Representatives admitted that humans were a species that could not be measured easily. They were not inferior. They were adaptable, inventive, and collaborative. Their unpredictability was not a weakness but a strength. Every new human achievement reinforced the realization that the Council had underestimated them, and that the consequences of this underestimation could be profound. Meanwhile, humans remained focused on their work, unaware of the growing tension in the Council. They were driven by curiosity, creativity, and the desire to explore. Their innovations were not motivated by revenge or defiance, but by a natural desire to learn, solve problems, and improve. This calm, consistent, and effective approach made humans unpredictable in a way that the Council could not fully understand. Even as the Council grappled with these developments, humans continued to collaborate globally. Researchers shared discoveries openly. Communities experimented with energy, transportation, and communication projects. Students and hobbyists contributed their ideas and skills. This growing network of collaboration amplified human progress, demonstrating that collective effort and curiosity could lead to results beyond expectations. By the time the Council began to understand the consequences of underestimating humans, it was clear that their judgment had unintended effects. The species they labeled inferior was now stronger, smarter, and more capable than many had imagined. Humans were not just innovating, they were reshaping perceptions across the galaxy. Council members realized that the declaration had backfired. Instead of containing humans, it had inspired them to rise, to learn, and to demonstrate capabilities that could not be ignored. The realization settled quietly in the chambers of the Council. Some members admitted privately that they had been wrong. Others considered ways to respond, to acknowledge the progress of humans without losing face. But the evidence was undeniable. Humans were not inferior. They were inventive, resilient, collaborative, and capable of achieving remarkable results when challenged. The species they had underestimated was quietly proving the G. By the time the Council realized the full consequences of their decision, humans were already moving in ways that were impossible to ignore. Reports of new technologies, innovative energy systems, and rapid problem-solving had become routine. Every breakthrough challenged the notion that humans were inferior. Every collaborative project, from small experiments to large-scale innovations, demonstrated a species that was not only resilient, but capable of exceeding expectations. The galaxy had underestimated humanity, and that mistake was becoming increasingly obvious. Council members debated quietly but urgently. Some admitted privately that the declaration of inferiority had been a mistake. Others worried about the credibility of the Council itself. How could they continue to maintain authority when the species they had dismissed was proving capable of unprecedented achievements? Some representatives whispered among themselves that they should reclassify humans, or at least acknowledge the unexpected progress. But even the idea of admitting error was difficult, given the pride and history of the Council. Meanwhile, humans continued their work without any thought of defiance or rebellion. They were driven by curiosity, creativity, and the desire to improve life on their planet and beyond. Engineers refined energy systems to be more efficient. Scientists explored new methods of space travel. And inventors created prototypes for tools and devices that could one day allow humans to reach distant planets. Communities collaborated globally, sharing knowledge and discoveries freely. Their progress was steady, intelligent, and remarkably organized, given the vast number of participants and the complexity of their projects. Education had transformed. Students of all ages were encouraged to experiment, ask questions, and explore solutions to real-world problems. Teachers fostered creativity, collaboration, and critical thinking, turning classrooms into small centers of innovation. Children built models, tested systems, and solved problems using their imagination. Parents and mentors supported their efforts, helping to refine ideas and encourage experimentation. Even hobbies and personal interests became opportunities to learn and create, contributing to the larger human effort. This culture of innovation extended into everyday life. Ordinary people, who once might have felt powerless to influence the world, discovered that their small contributions could make a difference. Farmers developed energy-efficient systems. Communities created communication networks, and engineers shared designs for new tools. Artists and creators combined creativity with problem-solving, building functional prototypes and devices that had practical applications. Humanity's ingenuity became visible, not just in laboratories or classrooms, but in every corner of society. Council observers could not ignore these developments. Initially, they had expected humans to be reckless, chaotic, or easily frustrated. Instead, humans were disciplined, adaptable, and intelligent. They learned from mistakes, adapted strategies, and improved systems consistently. Each new achievement reinforced the realization that the Council had misjudged the species. Every report brought evidence that humans were not only capable of innovation, but also uniquely able to work together across cultures, borders, and disciplines. The Council's anxiety grew. Some members suggested reviewing the classification of humans, acknowledging that they were far more capable than initially thought. Others resisted, unwilling to admit their mistake. Yet even the skeptics could not deny the evidence. Humans were excelling at tasks that the Council had predicted would take years to accomplish. Their creativity, cooperation, and determination were unmatched. The species once labeled inferior was quietly proving that labels meant little when intelligence, resilience, and human spirit were at play. Humans' progress was not limited to technology. Social collaboration, education, and global communication improved rapidly. People worked together across borders to share knowledge, experiment, and solve problems collectively. This unity strengthened their ability to innovate. Communities supported each other, sharing discoveries and building new solutions for energy, transportation, and communication. Even small projects became part of a larger network, amplifying human progress in ways the Council could not control or predict. The Council's confidence continued to erode. They had assumed that humans would react predictably to challenges, but humans consistently defied expectations. They were not reckless, nor were they discouraged by difficulty. They adapted, learned, and solved problems creatively. Their resilience and ingenuity forced the Council to reconsider their judgment. The species they had underestimated was now demonstrating qualities that no chart, report, or prediction had fully captured. In parallel, human culture celebrated this drive to explore and create. Art, literature, and media reflected the growing fascination with science, space, and innovation. Stories, films, and games encouraged critical thinking, collaboration, and problem-solving. Children and adults alike were inspired to imagine possibilities beyond Earth, to experiment with new ideas, and to contribute to a collective human effort. Creativity became both a personal and communal tool for progress, reinforcing the sense that humans were capable of more than anyone had anticipated. As humans continued to excel, other species began to take notice. Diplomats, traders, and explorers observed the rapid progress and growing influence of humanity. Some questioned the original classification, while others began to seek cooperation with humans rather than avoidance. The influence of human ingenuity spread quietly but steadily. Their innovations, collaboration, and determination set an example, challenging the assumptions and predictions of other civilizations. Even within the Council, attitudes were shifting. Representatives who had once been certain of human inferiority began to admit that their assumptions were flawed. Private discussions revealed a growing recognition that humans were not just intelligent, they were resilient, creative, and uniquely capable of learning and improving under pressure. The species they had dismissed was demonstrating not only skill, but also the ability to inspire change across the galaxy. Humans' approach remained consistent. They did not act with aggression, arrogance, or hostility. They worked with purpose, creativity, and intelligence. Their progress was a demonstration, not a confrontation. The results spoke for themselves. Every successful project, every collaboration, and every innovation reinforced the message. Humans were capable of far more than the Council had imagined. Back on Earth, the effect of this realization was felt strongly. People understood that their curiosity, collaboration, and determination were part of a larger movement. Students, teachers, engineers, and ordinary citizens all contributed to a global culture of innovation. Communities collaborated across disciplines, solving problems collectively and amplifying the impact of each individual's effort. The label of inferiority had become irrelevant. What mattered was what humans could do, learn, and achieve together. The Council had no choice but to observe and adapt. Reports showed continuous human progress, highlighting creativity, efficiency, and collaboration. Even small experiments led to insights that were applied on a larger scale. Every step forward reinforced the idea that humans were not only capable, but also exceptional in ways that could not be easily quantified or predicted. Finally, some counselors began advocating for a formal reconsideration of humans' classification. They argued that it was no longer accurate or productive to maintain the label of inferiority. Instead, humans should be recognized for their unique qualities: adaptability, ingenuity, cooperation, and resilience. The evidence was overwhelming. The species once dismissed was now a model of innovation, determination, and progress, quietly reshaping the galaxy's perception of them. By the end of this period, it was clear that humans had achieved something extraordinary. They had turned an official judgment meant to limit them into motivation, inspiration, and collective achievement. They were not defined by the Council's label, but by their creativity, collaboration, and persistent drive to learn and improve. Every breakthrough, every project, and every act of problem-solving contributed to a growing legacy of human capability. The Council, reflecting on these developments, faced a difficult truth. Humans were not inferior. They were unpredictable in ways that no one had foreseen, inventive in ways no model had predicted, and resilient in ways no judgment could contain. The species they had underestimated was quietly proving that intelligence, collaboration, and determination could achieve results beyond expectation. Humans continued their work, exploring new technologies, building collaborations, and expanding their understanding of the universe. They did not act with anger or defiance. They acted with curiosity, creativity, and persistence. Their progress was steady, thoughtful, and inspiring. Every small innovation contributed to a larger movement, demonstrating that humans could achieve extraordinary things when working together. And far away, the Council finally had to confront the reality they had long ignored. Humans were capable, inventive, and determined. They had not only exceeded expectations, they had redefined what it meant to be underestimated. The species once labeled inferior had proven its worth not through conflict, but through intelligence, creativity, and the power of collaboration. The galaxy, slowly but surely, began to recognize what humans already